We now move on to the 10th century within post-Christian history. And I'm looking at biblewheel.com/history/c10_empire.php. And the number 10 is represented by the 10th letter Yod, and spoke 10 on the Bible wheel is represented by 3 books: 2nd Samuel, which is the 10th book of the first cycle; Jonah, which is the 10th of the second cycle; and 1st Timothy, the 10th book of the third cycle, also the 10th epistle. And we look at 2nd Samuel 5:1. Then came all the tribes of Israel to David unto Hebron, and spake, saying, Behold, we are thy bone and thy flesh. Also in time past, when Saul was king over us, thou wast he that led us out and brought us in Israel. And the Lord said to thee, Thou shalt feed my people Israel, and thou shalt be a captain over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king of Hebron, and King David made a league with them in Hebron before the Lord. And they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. Otto I the Great. Otto I the Great was crowned emperor of the Holy Roman Empire by Pope John XII, though the term holy was not added until the 13th century. Otto chose to have the ceremony conducted at Aachen, built by Charlemagne in the 8th century, as a sign that he was continuing the Carolingian legacy. Many dukes of the realm served him a great banquet to show the German unity. This was the beginning of the First German Reich, in the line that culminated in Hitler's failed attempt to form the Third Reich. The empire was strongly allied with the Roman Catholic Church. Papal approval and coronation was acquired for the elected king of the Romans to become emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. The relation between church and empire was often tumultuous, with many German kings such as Henry IV and Frederick I opposing the Pope because of inevitable political differences between the German emperors and the Italian popes. The rise of the Holy Roman Empire in the 10th century corresponds to David's ascent to the throne in 2 Samuel. Its zenith of power in the following few centuries corresponds to the books of Kings and Chronicles that are filled with the history of kings of Israel and Judah. Its decline around the 13th century is described by Dr. Harold Damerow, the senior professor of government and history at Union County College, in his article on the Holy Roman Empire. While the Holy Roman Empire survived until 1806, when the self-made Emperor Napoleon of France finally abolishes it. The empire became a weak confederation of ultimately more than 300 independent little states. Just as France and England emerged as powerful monarchical states in the 13th century, the Holy Roman Empire went into decline. This means that the correlation between the history of the kings of Israel that begins on Spoke 9 and follows through to Spoke 14 corresponds almost exactly to that of the Holy Roman Empire. The eternal king, the crown of the Holy Roman Empire, was built with 8 hinged panels with pictures of King David, 2 Samuel, King Solomon, 1 Kings, King Hezekiah, 2 Kings, and Christ, the eternal King. This integrates to the content of Spoke 10 and the great theme of God, the eternal King, which forms a strong link between 1 Timothy, Spoke 10, Cycle 3, and Psalm 10 based on the set King forever and ever, which is a near key link, selecting only one other verse than these two. Spoke 10, Cycle 3, 1 Timothy 1:17, and then Psalm 10, verse 16. Now unto the King eternal, immortal, invisible, the only wise God, be honor and glory forever and ever. Amen. The Lord is King forever and ever. The heathen are perished out of his land. All of this finds its origin in Genesis 10, which contains the first appearance of the word kingdom in the Bible. Alphabetic integration. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion, Psalm 2. When read backwards, the four central letters of the Hebrew alphabet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Maim, spell the word Meleki, my king, used above in Psalm 2 in direct reference to David and prophetic reference to Christ. It is therefore a great wonder to behold the books corresponding to these letters spanning the time when David ascended to the throne unto the last mention of his death in 1 Chronicles 29:26. Thus David the son of Jesse reigned over all Israel, and the time that he reigned over Israel was 40 years. 7 years reigned he in Hebron, and 33 years reigned he in Jerusalem, and he died in a good old age, full of days. Riches, and honor. And Solomon his son reigned in his stead. Now the acts of David the king, first and last, behold, they are written in the book of Samuel the seer, and in the book of Nathan the prophet, and in the book of Gad the seer, with all his reign and his might, and the times that went over him, and over Israel, and over all the kingdoms of the countries. As mentioned above, the imperial crown, which was probably made for King Otto I in the 10th century, has images of the three greatest kings in the history of Israel and Judah. The rule of these three kings began with King David in the 10th and progressed sequentially with King Solomon in the 11th book, and King Hezekiah in the 12th. All of this is integrated with the order of the canon, the order of the Hebrew alphabet, and the course of world history. Historians call the time period spanned by the middle letters of the Hebrew alphabet the Middle Ages, when the kings rule their kingdoms. I'm looking at the imperial crown of the Holy Roman Empire on Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. And as you see, one king, although I can't tell whether whoever the king is on the image, it's probably Solomon, but we'll take a closer look if we can. But this is what it reads: the imperial crown of the Holy Roman Empire was the hoop crown of the Holy Roman Emperor from the 11th century to the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire in 1806. The crown was used in the coronation of the King of the Romans, the title assumed by the emperor-elect immediately after his election. It was made in the late 10th or early 11th century. Unlike many other crowns, it has an octagonal rather than a circular shape, and it is constructed from 8 hinged plates. The plate in the front of the crown is surmounted by a cross, with a single arch linking it to a plate at the rear of the crown. The crown is now exhibited at the Hofburg in Vienna. History. The crown was made probably somewhere in western Germany, either under Otto I, with additions by Conrad II, by Conrad II or Conrad III during the late 10th and early 11th centuries. The first preserved mention of it is from the 12th century, assuming it is the same crown, which seems very probable. Most of the kings of the Romans or the Holy Roman Empire were crowned with it. Along with the imperial cross, the imperial sword, and the Holy Lance, the crown was the most important part of the imperial regalia. During the coronation, it was given to the new king along with the scepter and the imperial orb. The imperial regalia of the Holy Roman Empire, especially the imperial crown, were kept from 1349 to 1421 in Bohemia, now in Czech Republic, where the Karlstein Castle was built to protect them. Between 1424 and 1796, they were all kept in Nuremberg, Franconia, and could only leave the city for the coronation. Currently, the crown and the rest of the imperial regalia are exhibited at the Hofburg in Vienna, and officially until there is again a Holy Roman Emperor of the German nation. An identical copy is in Aachen, Germany, in the Krönungssaal of Charlemagne's former palace, now the town hall. There are also copies of the crown and regalia in the Historic Museum of Frankfurt, as most of the later emperors were crowned in the cathedral of the city, as well in the fortress of Trifels. What got my attention is this paragraph where it says 4 smaller plaques bear pictorial representations of figures and scenes from the Bible and inscriptions in cloisonné and amel in Byzantine cinq-chemel style. The 4 plates, called picture plates, Bildplatten, each show representations from the Old Testament. Each of these enamel plates is surrounded by blue sapphires and pearls in raised filigree settings. The front right plate shows Christ in majesty between 2 cherubim. Beneath the inscription in red enamel, Per me reges regnant, by me kings reign, Proverbs 8:15. The back right plate shows the prophet Isaiah standing and speaking to King Hezekiah, who is shown sitting on his bed. As Isaiah holds a scroll with the words, "Behold, I will add 15 years to your life." 2 Kings 26. Above both Isaiah and Hezekiah is the inscription in red enamel, Isaias Propheta, Ezekias Rex. Prophet Isaiah, King Hezekiah. The front left plate shows King Solomon holding a scroll with the words, "Fear the Lord and flee from evil." Proverbs 3:7. Beneath an inscription in red enamel, Rex Solomon, King Solomon. The back left plate shows King David holding a scroll with the words, "The renowned king delights in doing justice." Psalm 99:4. Beneath the inscription in red enamel, Rex David, King David.